Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pail, steel toe boots.
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure. Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jaylen.
Can I call it John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
And there we have it, folks. Celtics parade a couple of days ago through the streets of Boston. Bobby Manning got an up-close and personal look at what it was like to ride a parade float, so to speak. Celtics now 1 week removed from winning their first NBA title in 16 years, 18th overall. And we're back here on the Garden Report, taking it all in. Sherrod, Bobby, Josue, John Zannison. We're just, honestly, we've got nothing to talk about. Nothing. Nothing
We're
other
still
than
celebrating.
we
That's
just
right.
wanted to check in and see how you guys are doing, how everybody's feeling, and what the mood is and what the vibe is. As everybody's kind of hangover mode, I think, a little bit here following the celebration. Oh, we lost Sherrod. We had Sherrod. We lost Sherrod. We'll get him back. Josue Pavone, Bobby Manning, John Zannis, Jimmy Toscano is off in the great Northwest.
Oh, man. Was he torn? Look at him.
I don't know. It's possible.
It is possible. He's got gigs everywhere.
Yeah, he's gigging. He's living off the celebrity of his Garden Report, his one garden appearance.
Yo, that's probably what it is. He's got the hard hats going. He's got people like, from places that he's never been reached out from. Like, hey, come on down. We got a gig for you. Come to the spot. Yeah.
So we do have things. Obviously, we have free agency, we have the draft, and that's stuff we're going to talk about. But let's I'm going to leave a lot of that to Bobby Manning and his cast of experts. We'll do some draft related content tomorrow, previewing the NBA draft, which is on Wednesday. We will be live on Wednesday and Thursday doing draft coverage. The Celtics pick 30th and 54th. Is that right, Bobby?
Yep. Two-day affair now. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? Celtics reports that the Celtics could move up. There's reports that the Celtics could move down. Again, anyone you get at 30 is a dart throw, probably long-term prospect, someone that you might see playing in a couple of years. Not somebody that you expect to make any sort of immediate impact on the team, but you never know. And it would be nice if the Celtics, hit here, because they do have to start replenishing, right, Bobby? The cupboard is bare in terms of what's coming up. But it's really well restocked for at least another year or two. So the Celtics are in a pretty good position of, let's see if you can build a little bit, maybe gather an asset or two or something that might be useful. But you got to start grabbing guys that can fill that back end of that roster, and you're going to end up doing it through the draft. So it is an important draft, I think, the next couple of years, bringing in some talent that you can, see if you get lucky with somebody who is an actual player, can work themselves into a rotation player. But ultimately, you need guys who can fill that roster, and that's what you're going to do. And you're talking about the 9, 10, 11, 12 spots, or even lower than that. So the draft is important. Free agency, again, not a ton you can do here. Wow. Right out of the gate, Cobra. Thank you. Didn't send us anything for banner night. Thank us for everything this year.
Appreciate you, Cobra.
We thank you guys as well. But yes, you need to find some people. You need to find a Hauser, a Caleb Martin, somebody, you got to go find somebody in here that might be able to help you. We'll bring Sherrod back in here as well. But first off, guys, vibe. What's the vibe here? We're 1 week out from the championship. Any developing opinions in terms of how you view things and how you feel at all? I wouldn't say differently, how national media has reacted to things. I know we spent a lot of time on banner night, kind of like, what didn't everybody see, about this team, and how did people have it wrong? And what was it? What was the reason people were trying to tear them down? I don't know if it was, that much tearing down after the Celtics won. I think there was a little bit of acknowledgement, like, that was a pretty good team, but where do you guys kind of sit here in terms of your process? And how you look back on this, and ultimately how you think this team is going to be remembered. It's early, but how do you think it's going to be remembered?
One of the greatest single seasons we've seen in the last decade. I think you got to look at like 5 and 10 year mile markers to really kind of get a sense of how a team is remembered. And I think 5 to 10 years from now, they're going to be remembered as one of the best single season teams we've seen. And if they put together another title or two in that championship, then they become one of those dynasties. They become, in the same breath as Golden State and those San Antonio teams that won multiple championships. And when you look at the way they're built, I don't understand why there was so much they're not going to win it this year vibes before the finals started. I mean, their two best players are in their mid to late 20s. They had the best record in the league. And last I checked, everybody played 82 games. So everyone got a chance to knock them off the crown. And, they beat the teams that were put in front of them. And you can't control that. I look at their championships similar to how Golden State's was that first championship. And that is people shortly after that were talking about how Golden State, they played teams that were missing this guy and missing that guy. But then when they won another champion, it's like, oh, okay, never mind. They're pretty damn good. I think the Celtics are lined up for a similar future where they're going to win another title or two with this core group. And that's going to just shut everyone up. And they'll be seen as one of the great teams of the last decade or so.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think it'd be one of those championships that people look back on and say, yeah, those teams that they played in the Eastern Conference, throughout the playoffs, they had guys that are, teams missing some of their best players, but it didn't matter. And I think that's the part that a lot of these national media members or people who are covering the NBA really overlooked when they went into this series picking the Dallas Mavericks. So I think a lot of that is going to be on people's minds in the sense of like, man, people really got that one wrong, but I don't think it'll ever be a time where people look back on this run and say, oh, they caught a break, because I think the dominance and the statistics and the numbers will speak for themselves. And I think a lot of the times when you look back on this run, you're going to say, man, that was really the true beginning of Tatum and Brown's dominance. Even though it took them to actually win it all, for people to actually realize that's how it's going to be remembered. And of course the guys that are around them as well. But more so, I just think it'll be about just how dominant that team was all year long. Like I've said it before. I mean, when we look at this era, whether it's whatever the window is, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we may look back at this season saying like, yeah, that was, in terms of pure dominance, the best one. Now, I'm not trying to say that like, some teams, I mean, some of those years coming up won't rival that, but I just think in the sense of how it was so overlooked, that's how it's going to be remembered. And I think that's how this championship team will forever be remembered in terms of its depth. It's well-balanced starting five or top six, if you will, as we kept calling it all year long. And of course, the beginning of the Joe Mazzulla era. I think that's really what it'll all boil down to when we talk about this year from I don't know, a year or even 2 years from now.
The one thing I want to throw in before Bobby jumps in just really, really quick was I think the national media completely undervalued the impact that Kyrie Irving and his struggles in Boston was going to have on this series. Because I think if Dallas would have played damn near any other team, they probably would have put up a better fight and Kyrie probably would have played better. But this was literally the one team to come out of the East that you kind of knew going in. Kyrie, the likelihood of him playing like crap was pretty high. And there's no other way you can slice or dice it. He sucked in every sense of the word in this period.
Especially having home court. That didn't help, for Celtics having home court.
Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah, I think they proved a lot of people wrong. And I don't get caught up in the national media reaction or any of the reaction to this, really, because people can feel how they want to feel about it. And obviously, I think Celtics fans in general have done a good job just enjoying this moment. The team certainly has too, as much as they've let some of the noise and outside talk get to them a little bit at times.
What they gonna say?
Everybody.
I love it
across the board on this team.
Give me all
you've
that.
seen them all out celebrating different places. You've seen them just basking in the parade. Everybody, there was an enormous amount of pressure on this team, and I think you saw it. I think you said it that night, John, like especially Tatum and Brown, they wore this. Mazzulla wore this pressure to a large degree. There was just a massive weight on this team. There was a massive title or bust expectation that you saw them wear all year. And I think that played out well in terms of how consistent they were, how focused they were. There was really nothing else that they were focused on other than winning this year. And I think a lot of that led to their style, the way they looked, right? And I think that's what underwhelmed some people. You didn't have the star driving them to the title. It was a lot of collective team-oriented contributions that added up to this great whole. You could compare it to the Spurs, who I know Brad Stevens has been trying to angle this organization to play like for a long time. Some of those other more complementary teams, you didn't have one or two guys carrying this team to this title. And I think that's why the MVP conversation got a little wonky too there. And you had a couple different guys who maybe could have won it, and it ends up going to Jaylen. I guess deservedly so, but there were a number of guys who probably could have won that here. It was a word to call because this team just played so unselfishly. Whoever needed the ball, whoever deserved the ball in that moment, often got it. And I think we've compared a lot to 08 in that sense. I think that might carry true. I think this team, because of some of the new rules and because of just the dynamic of the league, might have a little bit of a tougher time than some of the teams in the past repeating, even though they have this stacked roster. It's going to start to deteriorate a little bit over the next years here because pieces are just going to start falling off, and you're already starting to see that a little bit here. But they have the advantage of the core being intact. So next year, they have a great chance to repeat. The year after that, it'll get a little bit tougher. So how long can you keep this run going? Of course, I think a couple guys on the team have already started to look ahead to that. I think that's a big focus of this group. But this last week, you just saw them enjoying it. And that was pretty cool because they were so caught up in one day at a time, one game at a time throughout this run. To see, especially Al, Josue, he's always so buttoned up. He's always so focused. He never really says much. He was laughing this week, joking around, eating fast food.
Letting his hair down. Yeah.
That guy had a lot of fun this week. Everybody did on this team. It was cool to see.
He probably hasn't had a chicken tender since his last offseason or so. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, the double down a little on what Bobby said. The national media stuff, I thought it was dumb heading in. I think it's dumb on the way out, and I also pay no attention to it. And I don't think it matters. I don't think it ever mattered unless it fueled them a little bit. I just think it was, like I said, I think it was as simple as less disrespect, more boredom, and more, I need to generate content. So why don't we come up with some reason why I think Dallas is going to beat the Celtics? Oh, it's because Tatum and Brown are this, or Luka and Kyrie are the best backcourt of all time. It was manufactured garbage, and I never really bought into it to begin with. And I don't buy into any of it now, or any kind of retrofitting. People will go back and talk about, well, why they did this and why they did that. It means nothing. Somebody put it in here in the chat. And Bobby mentioned as well, weight of the world off their shoulders, because it really was. It wasn't just like, okay, we built you a super team, go win it. It was, I think, Tatum and Brown's last chance to coast on this young duo that eventually will mature to the point that they can win a title. If they didn't win this year, the narrative on these guys and who they are and what they represent and whether or not they can win together and the split up the Jays and blah, blah, blah narrative would have been brutal. And they knew it. Whether that stuff is real or not, or it's just media drivel. Look, we did this with this team the last couple of years and people didn't love it. Bobby, how many people were like, run it back? And we were like, how can you run this back? Like, when you keep losing with the core, at a certain point, you got to look at it and think there's something wrong in the core. Now you got rid of Smart and other pieces of it. And just the core, just the remaining core was Tatum and Brown. And if they didn't win, then you'd have to look at, it might be those guys. And I think they knew that. Yeah. And I think, they had to do it. They had to win. They were so serious. Look, and again, you guys mentioned the difference between their demeanor all season long, business-like, got to do it, play the disrespect card, not really cracking, jokes or smiles, very professional, workman-like, go to the office, do your job, don't get too high, don't get too low. And you watched it all just fall off them, finally. Right. And they got it. And they
even really, Joe, I was curious how it would look.
Joe completely, Joe just became. Joe is the most interesting man in America right now. He really is the most interesting man in the world.
In New England for sure. Yeah,
this guy is insane, and people love it. And so Joe, Tatum, these guys, like I'm worried about Joe. I think someone's got to watch out. He might be riding too high. I'm worried about Joe and Amit right now more than anybody else.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, you said it, John.
Those guys.
I mean, I'll take it. I'll even take it a step further. Yeah, the same core, running it back over and over, but also 3 different voices, 3 different coaches, and it gets to the point where, yeah, I think you nailed it there when you said that, John. When it's like maybe it's not the coaches, maybe it's them, maybe it's not necessarily the direction, but how they can put pieces together that'll help Tatum and Brown the most. And of course, Brad Stevens did that during the offseason, but it also kind of, you have to think about also the shock value that goes into trading someone like Marcus Smart, right? Yeah, the fans are devastated or split, whatever you want to call it. But also, if you're Tatum and Brown, you're like, oh man, like that guy was here before we were here, though. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like a sympathy thing, but it's more like okay, they're serious now. Like, we have to get this done because, like you said, John, like if they don't this year, then it's a matter of, oh no, these guys had the weapons, they just can't do it. I mean, that would have been the narrative 1,000%. It wouldn't have been, oh man, they ran into a tough Dallas team that was, riding on fumes. No, F all that. We would have been sitting here like the talent gap was way too large for these two to go. I mean, for these guys to go out there and blow it. But obviously that wasn't the case. But yeah, that would have certainly been the narrative. That would have been exactly what we would be saying here today, whether they lost in Game 7 or something even shorter than that.
But this was where I think the Brad Stevens perspective really was one of the low-key X factors, because not only did he have the vision of coaching these guys, but he also knew what they needed from a non-coaching perspective in his GM role. He realized that they're talented as hell. We're not going to find a better young tandem than those two, but they need something. I need to add something to this team that goes beyond talent. I need some, not just dogs, I need some veteran dogs who can lead. They brought in, I think they brought in some good players before, Drew and before Porzingis, but they needed guys who could lead in ways that this group wasn't accustomed to. Like, Drew is kind of the silent assassin. Like, you know what he can do. You know what he's capable of, but he spent almost the entire damn season just like, fellas, y'all do your thing. Call me when y'all need me to show up and put the clamps on kids and start splashing the rock, because I can go out and get you 20 a night if I need to. And they realized they really didn't need him to do that until they got to the NBA Finals. And Porzingis, you're just hoping that he can stay healthy enough to help you win a couple games. Because when I think back to the team that went to the finals a couple years ago, they needed one guy who could literally help them win a couple of games. And they probably would be Golden State. Porzingis, you look at what he gave them in the finals. What did he do? He helped them win 2 games. His ability to do what he does well and do it long enough and strong enough and impactful enough to help them win at the most critical stage of the season, which is the finals, that's exactly what he did. And I know that some people kind of cringe at the idea that, man, they should have got more out of him, should have got more. No, they got exactly what they needed, because the end goal from the beginning, can he help us get over the hump and win a championship? And that's exactly what he did.
I just think the funniest thing about that celebration video is the first person Tatum goes to hug is O'Shea Brissett.
I love it.
And he holds on to him
exactly
for a minute.
And O'Shea is like, bye-bye.
And it's like Jason Tatum's best friend. Jason Tatum's best friend is always the next guy to be gone. Like all they do is get rid of Tatum's buddies. It's
Can we get Javonte Green back? Can we?
Yeah, Javonte had a smile on his face.
I mean, smile on his face, tear down his cheek, Doug tear.
Yeah, for real. That was his boy. Those two. Yeah.
I hated that he left. But anyway.
Yeah. Again, as we said, going back a week later, I do think you look at this, and I think Sherrod made a really good point there. It's like, it's. Can you win that? It really is. They're going to be judged on whether they can stack them at this point. If you win it, people can easily look back, and if the Celtics fall flat in the second round next year, absolutely everyone's coming back and saying, yeah, they won it because they had a shit path, like the Lakers in the bubble or whatever. Like that was what I mean. The Lakers were good that year, but you can easily convince yourself is like they won that as a one-off, but they weren't that good. Everything was weak, blah blah blah, and they come back and they fall flat, or someone else jumps ahead of them. They win another, they get back to the finals, they win 2 out of the next 3. All of a sudden, you are like, oh, this is real.
That one really annoys me because they got advantageous matchups and they got some injury luck here or there.
It's a dumb narrative. It's dumb.
But yeah, they didn't face easy teams.
It's two things. Yes, it was easy. Shit, I hate when that
happens. I just looked up and saw balloons. I was like, what's going on?
Yes, it was easy. No, it didn't matter who they played. They would have beaten anybody in front of them. It didn't matter.
I don't know if that's true, but
in the East, they beat anybody.
Yeah. I think so.
In the East, yeah.
They got the absolute best matchup for the team, the Final Four out West. Dallas was easily the worst team.
And I mentioned this on championship night, how stupid this comparison is going to be. And obviously this guy would be the one to make it. No, it's not.
Man.
They have 5 of the top 30 players in the NBA and 2 of the top 10 or 12.
I was about to say, I can already see Sherrod shaking his head. No.
We talked about this. This is the dumb comparison
right now. This team is light years better than that team because that team went and now think about this. Okay, this is how I kind of look at it.
It wasn't scoring 120, right, Sherrod?
Did not have a single player that was a legitimate All-NBA player. Not one. The Celtics, they got 2, borderline 3, and the way that the Pistons won that game, I mean, they mucked up the finals. They made it a defensive slugfest. Boston, they can smoke you and beat you by 50 by outscoring you. They can lock you down defensively. This, as much as I love that Pistons team, and God knows I love those, this Celtics team is better. And because this Celtics team is more and the other thing, too, you got to think about is this. You start looking at the players on the Celtics team, other than Sam Hauser, is there a lottery pick not in the Celtics rotation? You look at that Detroit team, you had Tayshaun Prince, number 22 pick. You had Chauncey Billups, who was a number 3 pick that bounced around. You had Ben Wallace, who was undrafted. I mean, it's not even close.
I know the Celtics are 3.
What about that Lakers team, Sherrod?
3 number was that the first super team? And a 4 pick among their top 6 players in terms of the draft. Like, I mean, it's not. These
are enormously talented players.
These are high pedigree players, like Derek White is bottom of the first round. Holiday, I think, was mid first round, 16th, just outside of the lottery. And then you've got Horford, Tatum, and Brown, all number 3 picks in their drafts.
Lottery.
Brown and Tatum, the best players in each of their respective draft classes. So, like,
Porzingis was the top 10 pick.
Yeah. Well, Porzingis was 4th. Overall. So what are you talking about in terms of like this ragtag bunch of misfits that like pulled it together? This is a team with a ridiculous pedigree in terms of both draft pedigree and individual accomplishments and stats and who they are. It's
John,
it's
you could make a
ridiculous.
case potentially that this Celtics team may be the most talented title team in terms of where they were drafted and their impact that we've seen in the last decade. Name another team that's won a title like in the last 5-10 years that had that many guys in the top 5 draft picks. It doesn't happen.
Think of the skill set too across the board of these guys, and it's going to inspire other teams who will try, but probably won't be able to reach the collective ball handling and creation ability they have across the board offensively, and the ability to guard all these positions on defense. It's through some stroke of luck, certainly with the Holiday one specifically, that he became available, but also them prioritizing those kind of positions, those kind of role players, guys who complement each other. It was amazing team building.
But they're not role players.
It doesn't even matter if they complement each other. You grabbed 6 players who are all like all-star level. Like, it's just give me all your players. I'll make it work. Like, it doesn't, it wasn't like they went and like, oh, I need this and I need that. It was like, you guys are going to give me Porzingis for this. You're going to give me Holiday for that. I don't care if those guys were wings or centers or guards. Players of that caliber who are made available to you for next I hate saying next to nothing, but for things you're more than willing to give up that are such obvious upgrades, the idea that this is a blueprint is stupid. Like, the blueprint is, yes, when other teams are going to give away really good players because they're cutting salary.
I don't know if you felt that way.
You're not
time,
afraid
though.
to go into a second apron, then, I mean, Bobby, of
Oh,
course.
yeah, about to have that classic argument. Here we go. I see. You see,
issue
Sherrod is coming right now.
Was the sentimental attachment to Rob and the question on whether or not it should have been Horford or Rob flipped. But everybody thought Porzingis for Smart was a massive upgrade, and everybody thought Holiday was like, oh my God, get me that guy. It's just ultimately you knew you were parting with something. The only question back then was Rob or Horford, and which one can you live without? But like,
and you get Derek White for freaking Romeo Langford, who I love. But
and then the Derek White.
That.
And the Derek White from the beginning, which obviously ended up probably being
the
we
most
had
on all those moves, though.
Yeah, but nobody. I mean, the Celtics knew, or were pretty. I mean, there was no debate on Holiday having the pedigree that he had. There was no debate on Porzingis being a massive upgrade at an area of need that would change their offense, assuming he had health and it meshed and this and that. Really, we were talking about fit above all else. Like, how's Porzingis going to fit with the Jays? How are they going to fit having to share the ball and all of those things? And Derek White at the time was a deal that people liked on the front end, then watched him really struggle in that first year and think, did they get sold a bad, bill of goods there? Is this guy not as good as Brad maybe thought? And then instantly within a month or two of year two, you're like, oh my God, this was the biggest, most lopsided thing we've ever seen. So, I mean, you're just being gifted these players. Who can do
you had
that
identify
again?
them,
Regardless of how people felt about it, who can go get those three guys for what they gave up? If that's the blueprint, good luck. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though. Like, there aren't teams out there that could do that. They didn't have the pieces to pull that off, nor were they willing to sort of make a move like that. And when they thought about the risk of it all. So I think,
the Thunder just started by picking up Caruso, which is a very similar move to a White kind of addition.
See, but then that's a team that has the pieces. They have the assets. They can do stuff like this, But yeah,
that trade deadline 2 years ago, when Bobby, we were like, who went? Powell went to the Clippers, and I'm like, you could have for nothing. I'm like, this is the new NBA. Teams are offloading to get under these aprons because they want to get out stuff. So they're going to take cents on the dollar on pretty damn good, or very serviceable players. So if you're willing to foot the bill, go into that tax, and you can fit it into your roster, absolutely scoop these guys up. Celtics just hit a home run with every single one of those moves. That can't be a blueprint because it's almost impossible to run that back.
Well, the blueprint is aggression. The blueprint is, if you have the guys, invest in the pieces around them. All that stuff, I think, is something other teams could try to do here. But again, to go 3 for 3, to have them fit in, and to have them succeed individually, like all three guys did, does take some amount of foresight and, the ability to identify those right guys. Because you could make a bunch of, like you said, you could have went and got Powell. You could have went and got some of these other guys. So that's where, Stevens and certainly all the guys that were in the front office and the guys who helped make that transition deserve a ton of credit, because we got a lot of stuff wrong. Everybody got a lot of stuff wrong over the years about this team. But I think the biggest one across the board that people got wrong was that Brad was just effectively being ousted and, was just as a GM as a holdover for his contract to expire and all that stuff. He was serious about it. And he made some amazing moves there. It's still unbelievable to think about some of the stuff he did. And certainly he got fortunate on some moves he didn't make. Mentioned Pritchard, who would have been out the door for Pirtle. Who knows if Porzingis happens at that point if they do that trade. But it's amazing his record for a guy who didn't have experience at that position. And again, he's got people around him up there that I'm sure are part of this, but he makes that last call, right, on these kind of trades. And they were some aggressive trades at the time. They look obvious now, but we had debates at the time. We had a Holiday debate. We had a Porzingis
It's less
debate.
about whether we knew look, we didn't really have a big Holiday or Porzingis debate. It was just, is it going to fit?
How are they going to fit in?
How are they going to fit?
It was not a.
It wasn't a matter of like if these guys made a huge mistake or anything.
It was the talent.
The White one we did.
The White only, but it doesn't matter what we thought. Meaning, all I'm saying is it can't be replicated. You can't. You can't get a White, a Holiday, and a Porzingis, regardless of whether dummies like us like to deal or not. That's beside the point. You can't get 3 players of that caliber for what you gave up and call that the blueprint and just say, I'm going to do that. This notion that teams are like, oh, I'll just go get 6 all-stars to go with my 2 top 10 wings. Like, that's not repeatable. Like, that's the whole point, is like, this team is so, in terms of its roster construction, this team is so far ahead of most of its competition. It can't be replicated and it couldn't be defeated this year. That's why they won. They were miles ahead of everybody in the East. It was so far ahead of the competition. No, I don't think people can just go do that. Like, it's really hard.
The thing about what the Celtics have done, and we talk about all the folks that played a role in the transition of them making all these moves, but you got to go and get at the transaction dynamic of this blueprint, which is Wick. I mean, he benefited because there were a bunch of owners, a bunch of bean counters who were afraid to go into that second apron or even that first apron. And Wick, as a smart businessman who has a very diversified financial portfolio, was just like, we'll take that little financial hit, because
that is a unique part of this. Yeah,
set them up for years.
Well, they're in position to
be a top tier team in the NBA.
That's another thing. Yeah,
so
we weren't sure.
Wick is like the wild card in this whole blueprint that the Celtics have put together that doesn't get, I think, nearly as much credit as he probably should, because there are a lot of folks in his position who are scared to do this because they see what we're spending, and what is this going to cost us? And it scares him off from making some of these deals. And Wick was like, make it happen. Go get Drew Holiday. Give Porzingis a contract extension. Go get Pritchard. I know Pritchard hasn't done much, but damn it, get a man his money. And you start looking at all these deals that they've made before understanding how this was all going to come together. And once they won the championship, it's like, oh, man. There are a lot of teams who are thinking, damn, we should have probably made a stronger pitch for Drew Holiday because we had more assets. Or, man, Why did we think about trying to add a 7'2" stretch big who could potentially put us over the top and who had no problem becoming the third option after being the first or second his entire career? I don't think others will replicate what the Celtics have done, which is great for Boston. But they have to acknowledge that the Celtics didn't just talk the talk. Their ownership walked the walk when it comes to building a team. They literally put their money where their mouth was.
Yeah, well, they had to, though, Sherrod, especially after what the Golden State Warriors did.
They
had to. They knew that
if they didn't make the Drew Holiday deal, if they didn't make the Porzingis trade, they still were good enough, even with that core, to probably get to the conference finals again.
It's not just making it; it's making it and extending those guys. So it's showing.
That's the part that I'm getting. Yeah, when you talk about Wick and paying these guys, that's what I'm talking about. Giving these guys an extension, saying, "Look, we got a championship window here. We can build a dynasty. I'll pay for it. I believe in these guys." But obviously, the biggest part of this was the beginning, getting it right in 2016 and 2017, not drafting Fultz, going to get Tatum, not drafting whoever was in line, whether it was Jamal Murray, Chris Dunn, or whatever before that in 2016 with Jaylen Brown. Like, I think that's what made it easier. I'm not going to say it's so easy, if you're Wick, but it made it certainly easier, and locking those guys in and knowing that, okay, they got their max deals coming. They're not going anywhere. They're in their mid-20s. If we could surround these guys with guys like Porzingis and Drew Holiday and build that window, then okay, I'll pay for that. I'm not going to put all my money in for 1 year, and that's not what this is at all. When you look at what happened last summer.
You know what I'm interested in seeing, Joe Sway?
What?
I'm interested to see, can they do what a lot of great teams do, and that's get really good talent for pennies on the dollar? Are they at a point now, and I'm throwing this out to all of you, do you think they're at a point now where they can go out and get a guy that's maybe a $8, $9, $10 million player for maybe the vets minimum because they want to win a chip?
I think that's how a lot of those dynasties, that's how they keep going. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen after the dust settles. Yes, the guy who's left, the Gallinari or the whatever, that level player. But like on this team for next year, the best available player is somebody who's going to slot in as your 8th or 9th guy. So like, I don't know what's going to be left that isn't going to be scooped up. But you're right. Once everyone decides where they're going to put their money, if there's a guy or two left out there, yeah, it's possible that you'll be in that You'll be in that advantageous buyout situation the teams are in.
That's what I want to see. I want to see how they deal with that.
But also, like, people are stupid and they still want to go to friggin' Miami and LA for their vet minimum and just have good quality of life and hope that they can run it back there. So I'm not sure what they get, but you would think that someone would like to attach themselves to this, and I think that it's possible. Now, real quick, all it takes is one. Exactly. You just need one, but you also need very little here, especially if you just pay Hauser and then he becomes unrestricted next year, which probably you're going to have to do because you're not going to be able to pay him a huge increase right now. You give him his $2 million, you run it back 1 year, and then you start figuring shit out the year after that, in which case you're going to have to get creative. I think the bill comes due in 1 year, but you run it back.
Got the Hauser replacement up in Maine right now.
With who?
The guy that they signed on a two-way. The shooter.
Oh yeah, you think he's a shooter? I mean, you think he's gonna pan out?
Well, I mean, he you look at his pedigree; it's very similar to Sam Hauser's when he was on a two-way. So, and I think that was kind of their thinking to some extent. Like we all applaud what Derek White has been able to do. If Derek White didn't pan out, they were hoping that the young fella from Alabama, the 5-star recruit who was up in the G League,
Davison,
point guard,
Davison, JD. Yeah.
Who has not? I haven't been all that impressed with him, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
but,
same, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and then the other one is Drew Peterson. Yeah, who everyone was wondering who he was when he had the trophy, when he used the conference final trophy. I'm like, come on, guys, leave him alone.
We're going to do a couple things. We're gonna, speaking of putting money where our mouth is, not just Wick, we're gonna do it. We're gonna look back at some of our preseason bold predictions and go over which ones were close, which ones were not at all, and which ones of us deserve a little bit of blame pie in the face for getting it wrong, and that's totally fine. We'll do that because we are not just a Celtics channel and not just Celtics fans. We are Boston. It's fair to bring up some breaking Boston news right now, and the Bruins have traded Linus Ullmark for a couple of players, one of which being a goaltender, and they get a first-round pick this year, the 25th overall. That's actually their pick back. That they had sent to Ottawa. They're getting that back. Really, this comes down to Ullmark in his final year and $5 million for the 25th overall pick. The goalie, Korpisalo here, Ottawa's going to retain 25% of that cap hit, but he makes $4 million a year, and he makes it for the next 4 years. So you've only gained $2 million in cap space this year, and now you're paying a backup $3 million a year for the next few years. It's not an awesome deal. I'm still trying to work my way through it, but you got a draft pick. You got back in the draft and a first rounder and a chance to replenish a little bit. And honestly, I don't think there was a market out there for Ullmark beyond this, but I did want to mention that this thing happened. Once again, they were a year too late on this deal. I would have traded him immediately after the Vezina and kept Swayman. Yes, I've been a Swayman guy all along, even last year when Ullmark was having a historically good season. We're going to continue on with our Celtics talk, but I did want to bring up the breaking Bruins news here. Tell you a little bit. Oh, sorry. 1 second, guys. I apologize. Tell everybody at home about PrizePicks. Check it out. Get in on the action here. $100 match when you deposit $100 here on PrizePicks, the #1 fantasy app in America and the exclusive fantasy partner here of the CLNS Media Network. And again, basketball's over. You're kind of out of it, right? But you've got other things. You've got the WNBA. All you got to do, as we say with PrizePicks, and you know the deal here, you pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and that's all you have to do. You can win up to 100 times your money. And as we said, you can go with Caitlin Clark, Brianna Stewart, Angel Reese. It's getting really good there, by the way, for those people who are following or just kind of sort of following. I feel like the last week or two in the WNBA has been less about drama and more about, like, people are talking about Reese and Caitlin Clark and some of the young players coming in here having like a Bird and Magic effect on the WNBA when they came in there and what's going on. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch. But you can also get involved with baseball. The Red Sox are hot, one of the hottest teams in town. Anybody a fan out there? They've won 8 out of their last 10. honoring the Celtics tonight at Fenway Park for their NBA championship. So download that app, use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to 100. Once again, download the app, first deposit match up to $100. Also want to tell you guys briefly about GameTime, which again, I hope some of you guys snuck in there. I hope you did to get into Game 5. It would have been nice. We did advise you to go out to Game 4, thinking they might clinch it there, and that would have been a cheaper buy. It was, but we were wrong. We were wrong. We were right that it was cheaper. We were wrong to go out there. So sorry if you did. On our
shout out to the fans that pulled up. That was cool.
A lot of fans did, and shout out to them.
So many fans. Yeah.
So again, authorized ticket marketplace, and you could, nothing better in the summer than going to a baseball game, and that's what you can do right now. If you want to go check it out, as I said, the Sox are kind of rolling. And this is your best ticket to, good MLB tickets here, last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals. You want to go in, get some choice seats for the Red Sox, and you can get them at a pretty good price right now. Check out Game Time. And as always, all you have to do is use that code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. Once again, download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. Guys, one thing I wanted to talk about before we move on to our bold predictions is whose stock has risen after this title. Certainly the Jays you could talk about. I may argue nobody's stock has risen any further than Joe Mazzulla's in the last month or so. The Jays are the Jays, and they've always been good. Someone will even argue that Tatum, I wouldn't say took a hit, but he didn't come out of this perfectly clean because he took a lot of criticism, and there'll be some people out there who say that the Jays needed a super team formed around them in order to win. I think some of that is fair. I think some of it is what it is. I don't think you could possibly be riding higher than Joe Mazzulla is right now, though. Not just in terms of his personality and how people are viewing him, which is like a superstar, and as we said, we showed some stuff from him at the parade here, absolute rock star status, but also just the way he coached and the way people have learned to appreciate his coaching and how much we've learned over time that his coaching factored into how the Celtics played, how he got them back on track, how much the players trusted it, and how much his plan and his game plan really was a huge, huge, huge part in the Celtics being able to take home banner 18 here.
He got better as the playoffs rolled along, which is exactly what you want to see from players. And it's unexpected to see that from coaches. But Joe is a young coach, and he's shown that he is more than ready to be among the top tier coaches in the NBA. You look at just the way the kind of baptism by fire, so to speak, for him getting the job. And then you look what he was able to do when he actually had some time to think about doing the job and not just have it thrust into his lap. He got better. His use of timeouts got better. His use of rotations, he did a better job of throwing little wrinkles in there. His game management overall, I thought, was leaps and bounds from what we saw last season. And that's what you want to see. And the thing that I go back to with Joe is that not only is he, an incredibly young person for an NBA head coach, but his core is also young. So he can literally grow as his core grows. And that's, to me, we're not going to really get a true sense of Joe Mazzulla as a coach until he has to deal with a challenging situation. Like, what's going to happen when he's still around and Tatum and Brown aren't? Is he still going to be with the Celtics then? Is he going to be around that long? How is he going to handle adversity? Because he really hasn't had that much since he got past that initial awkward inaugural stage of him being the head coach. And I think what he's doing now is he's building up, I think, the ability to withstand those blows, because he's going to take some shots. There's no doubt about that. But I think he's shown enough where you feel that when that time comes, he will handle it, and he'll handle it well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think everyone's starting to get to know him a little better, especially people who didn't follow this team all year long. I think his the way the team was able to adapt to him, I think is a lot of what you're seeing in the sense of like Derek White talking about how, he couldn't be the player he is today without Joe. And just a lot of the comments that you hear from the players, Jaylen Brown, another one, talking about how just his overall message has really resonated in that locker room, and you can just tell because that's one of the first people that they're mentioning when they're talking about the success of this team. So yeah, for sure. I mean, from an X's and O standpoint, no question compared to what we saw last year. I mean, I think he's improved in a big way in that sense. But when we're talking about, dynasties and him being the leader of this team for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons, throughout this potential championship window, I think that's the part where it's most important that your players not only believe in you, but they want to go out there and win it for you. You got a better sense of that this year, all year long, compared to last year. And I think that's what's really going to be, that's a big part of why his stock's on the rise for sure. But yeah, I think out of everyone, even the players included, I mean, especially the players, right? He's the one that his stock is at his highest for sure.
Yeah. And I think Brown, I think this is fair. Brown's stock also, I think, went up despite,
significantly.
Not making.
Oh yeah, with the MVPs.
Despite the personal accolades going in the other direction, where he doesn't make All NBA, was second team last year. I think most people come away from this with a better overall impression of who Jaylen Brown is this year. But mainly, I was just focusing on Mazzulla because it's so interesting watching him in the parade, guys. And Bobby, I know you were on the float, the press truck directly behind the Mazzulla thing, just watching him, just soak it all in and go bananas. He took that trophy to the north end. He's hopping up and down off of that thing. He's like man of the people. He's celebrating. He's jacked and pumped. Even after the game, like, we're on the court 4 hours after it's over, after we did 3.5 hours of post-game coverage. Mazzulla's doing laps around the court there. I mean, he's really taking it all in and living this moment and this vibe. But the people have really taken to him. I feel, over the past few weeks, honestly.
Yeah, and that's a product of his basketball X's and O's approach working for this team. I don't think people would appreciate the oddities as much if there wasn't the success and the game plans playing out on the floor as there was. And you saw that last year. You saw it at points early in this year when you're wondering, why is he lashing out at Gary and doing all this weird stuff?
Yeah.
So you look at
going through his archives and whatnot, right?
His imprint, it was on this team throughout, and you knew he had a plan. You knew he made adjustments over last year, but the 3-point stuff, it worked. He added different layers like offensive rebounding and post-ups. A lot of that stuff worked. I think he showed a flexibility even within games, within series to change what they were doing. I don't think there's any one thing outside of that 3-point approach, and I think that worked for this group in particular. You can probably nitpick that in other situations, and to talk about repeating, I think the Lakers are trying to repeat a Mazzulla higher in many ways with Redick there and some of the things he's going to try to bring to that team. So this worked on an amazing level. And again, the foresight of Stevens and that front office to trust a guy who was so far down on that bench, who didn't have amazing experience and who struggled at points during that first year, but they gave him another chance. I'm glad they did. I wanted to see it if they really believed in them, and they clearly did. And we'll see what happens going into the future here. But this was an amazing achievement by him this year. I think he had the pulse of this group. I think he inspired and pushed them in different ways with some of the analogies and metaphors and things he threw around. And those things seem to work with this team, with these personalities in particular. But I think a lot of that was the byproduct of individual guys seeing how this worked for them. And they started to believe in how you can sacrifice and how you can fit into this greater whole and in the system, because by the end, this became a Mazzulla system. A lot of the drop, a lot of the taking the rim away, taking the threes away, that worked on defense. I think there was a greater attention to defense this year, which is credit to him and some of the leaders on the team. Yeah. And the offense worked. They had so many offensive issues in the past, and to see this become such a functional, consistent offense built around two guys who aren't the greatest playmakers ever was really impressive.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Is the reality is why did we get more playmaking out of certain players that you weren't able to get it from last year? Was it as much their evolution or the team around them made it that much easier because the reads were easier and you're playing 5 out and there's a lot more space and just going through your progressions and going, when you get to where you are, you look around and the options many times were very clear. The double comes, you've got the kick to the corner, and that's why they were able to do what they did without actually without a true point guard and without a real playmaking wing. Everybody was just able to do it because it all worked together, and so much of that had to do with Mazzulla's offense. Real quick, we want to tell you guys a couple of different things. You can absolutely, and you should absolutely shop the CLNS merch store. Stuff is flying off the shelves, literally. Shop CLNS Media, shop.clnsmedia.com. Go check it out. Get your hard hats, get your t-shirts. How about them damn Celtics? The name drop t-shirt, white and green hard hats. If you want, maybe we'll do a city version too. Who knows? Check it out. We saw zillions during the parade. I can tell you Sherrod is wearing one right now. I'll move him up a window so you can see it. But yeah, go check out that merch store. There's more stuff coming. We're working on some new designs and some new concepts. And we really do appreciate when you guys do get after it, contribute. And honestly, the amount of stuff that we saw that people were wearing out in public was really it was really heartening and kind of funny, but great. We loved it. So we really did.
Cool. It was so
it was
cool.
very, very, very cool to see it. Now, as promised, we're going to whip through some of these because we have quite a few to get to, and I'm going to ask each person to defend their position. But looking back on our preseason bold predictions, okay, bold predictions. Ready? Who wants one first? I've got some for everybody.
Let's see what Sherrod said.
Let's
go.
All right,
we'll go with Sherrod. Sherrod, I'm going to give you Sherrod's were good, okay? Because Sherrod got things right. Celtics finished top 5 status, both offensive and defensive rating, 100%. I don't know if this one was bold, Sherrod, but offensively and defensively, this team was balls out on both ends.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that they were going to be elite. I felt they were going to be better than that, but I went to the safe route. I went top 5. I really thought they'd be better than that, top 3, but that I just felt that at some point they would just absolutely screw that up if I spoke it into existence. So
top 5. That was Joe's goal, right? It was a top 3. That was his thing. Yeah.
And you didn't. We'll go with Bobby. 2 Celtics will make the all defensive team. You were right, but you were wrong in who. You said it would be Kristaps Porzingis and Derek White, I believe.
What?
It ended up being right? Is that what you
said? Porzingis?
You thought Porzingis?
Yeah.
I guess that's bold.
That is bold.
Yeah, I thought Porzingis, and again, he had a chance to be if he hit the games requirement. So it could have been 3. But I was bold with Porzingis.
Yeah, well, he was bold with Porzingis. We're gonna go with one of mine. Same. 3 Celtics make all NBA, and none of them are Jaylen Brown. That was my thing. Now that was I'm gonna qualify this a little bit.
Please do.
If you read my article, if you read my write-up here, it was Jaylen Brown's stats are going to take a hit this year, but he's going to be a better player. That was more the meat of this one rather than a Jaylen disrespect one, just so people see it. I thought other people would Porzingis, and I also forgot it was positionless this year, but I thought Porzingis would slot in as a big. I thought Holiday might make. I thought other people would get awarded for their contributions, and Brown would do less, but end up doing more. So he ended up not making all NBA. Neither did anybody else outside of Tatum, but he did do the more this year. So while this one will look like a Brown disrespect one, it was not entirely. We're going to do one for Josue here. This is the season Jason Tatum wins MVP.
Oh, man. 0 for 2. Didn't even get the finals joint.
Josue.
Also, what was the other part? What do you mean? He dude says bold. Bobby, you're on that text thread, and I mean bold, guys. I'm like, all right. He gets so mad if you say
he's in the mix.
I don't know anything remotely bold, right? He can't even be in the mix.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. We can spin it. I just spun Tatum.
It's bold.
This reminds
Yeah.
me, John. I think you're gonna owe
Yeah, that's fun,
Jaylen
Brown.
coming out of this run some level of an apology, Cam, just for the years you've been on him. Because man,
There's no
Finals
way John's doing
MVP.
Is there a lifetime apology?
Did you ever
or something like that?
No chance he does that.
All right, so let me ask you this question because we do this all the time. Was Jaylen Brown worlds better this year without driving with his head down, jumping, not knowing where he was going, and making bad reads and bad decisions at the wrong time? Did he not do that this year? Is that why he was better? That answer my question. That's why he was better, right? So when I said that he did that, when I said that he was doing that in years prior, and I found it to be maddening, and it would stunt the offense, and despite that his stats that he was bogging things down by making poor decisions and poor reads, then that I'm standing by it. And this is him getting better. Huh?
I'm with John on this one. No apology, Cam needed.
So he did those things, and then he didn't do those things, and he was much, much better this year. The number one thing Brown did above all else was stop doing that, and that was the biggest evolution in his game. His decision-making was great, and he didn't force anything. I mean, relative to what he used to do, you can't be an NBA player and not force the issue from time to time. He made the right decision at such a high clip and high percentage relative to past. I'm not doing that. No, I stand by the criticism from Brown before. I think he was a maddeningly an inconsistent player when it came to that sort of stuff, and he really did have those issues. He got rid of all of them. Tatum, on the other hand, he discovered new problems with his game this year, so we're going to see if he can fix some of those. So like, Tatum was doing this, and Brown was down here, and now Brown has leveled his game up.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the ghost of Game 7.
I'll apologize for not being sure that he'd ever correct it. I thought he was who he was, and I always said Jaylen Brown is a guy who's just a bucket machine, and that's not a bad thing. You can find it verbatim and cut it out of any Garden report. He's a bucket machine, and that's a great thing because it's the hardest thing in the world to do. Jaylen Brown gets buckets, and that's the number one skill you want out of everybody because it's the hardest thing to do. I just didn't think the other parts of his game would come around. I don't think he's a divine playmaker, but I absolutely think that he got better by doing less, and it was great because he just didn't force it this year, and it was awesome. And he would drive, and it wouldn't be there, and he would stop, and he would pull it back out, or he would make the pass. That stuff he wasn't doing as much last year. You knew he had the ball, and it was going up.
Very organic watching him play this year. I mean, it just felt natural. Totally different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, and still doing all of the other stuff that he was doing, which is ridiculous efficiency from tough mid-range, which is where Tatum suffered most this year. Tatum not having that midi game and being able to get those tough buckets.
Biggest shot of the year was a Brown mid-ranger, Game 3.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
apology Cam request denied.
Denied. I'm denied. We're gonna give Jimmy a shot, guys. I'm wrong about a lot of things. I'm gonna bring him up in a minute here. Jimmy, Kristaps Porzingis saves a baby from a burning building on the way to the Garden, drops 25, 10, 7 that night. The spirit of this prediction for Jimmy is Kristaps Porzingis is going to be fucking everything, and he's 100% right with this. Is Porzingis is going to do it all, and he did it all right in both the popularity and what he did for this team.
I love when he comes in
Game 1, lives forever and infinite.
Look at the crowd and give them a little wink, and then go out and do. I'm just like, this is that.
I don't think, John, has anyone interacted with the crowd directly as much as Porzingis over the years that you've watched this team?
I don't know. He was
since
awesome.
KG, probably. KG's do a little bit of that.
Big Baby tried to.
And then they laughed at him. But no, KG used to do the little pregame thing when he would check in with all the sides and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's probably the last person. But the whole walk down the tunnel during the finals, though, that shit's legendary, man. That's some stuff that, the Celtics fans will be telling their kids one day when they're old enough. That stuff was great. That Game 1 is something I'll always remember forever.
That was probably one of my favorite moments too. Him coming out of nowhere after being gone for 5 weeks and just exploding because we had all those.
Like the best game of the year. Yeah,
instant classic.
Instant classic, man. Like that's NBA final legend stuff right there, man.
He was awesome, and it was such a pleasant surprise too. Because, again, I go back to our conversation earlier. We didn't know he was in Washington. He was in those Kemba talks years ago that we would kick around, and I don't think any of us were thrilled about him. He had a great year last year. You saw some potential, but the personality flourished and fit in the city in a way that you never could have imagined, at least on the scale that it did. And his game translated perfectly. The efficiency, 1.3 points per possession in the post in the regular season, is just otherworldly. And he was great defensively too. We'll see what happens here. The health got dicey at the end, and that's a real concern into the future. Surgery, we'll hear more from Brad tomorrow, I'd imagine, about that. A weird injury. I don't think any of us know what to expect out of that in the next season. I know the Globe's reporting it's not necessarily certain he'll be ready for camp. So that's the other side of Porzingis here that you worried about a little bit going in. But man, when he was out there, it made this team unstoppable.
And that's the thing that you didn't know until he got here was how would he fit in with the team? You knew talent-wise he'd be a great fit, but could he accept the role of being, at best, the number 3 option? Something he's never had to do in the NBA. He was always either the best player or second best player.
The fit with Jaylen, too, someone mentions.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the relationship he built with Jaylen, who, as we all know, isn't exactly the easiest guy to just kind of get that kumbaya Ubuntu vibe with. And no fault of Jaylen. Jaylen's just a different kind of dude, and that's fine. But him and Porzingis vibed in a way that I don't think any of us saw coming. And to Porzingis' credit, he embraced the fact that I'm not that guy anymore. But I can win a championship being next to the guys and helping them out when they need me to. And that's the thing.
It was a great story.
Yeah. And that's what made
it was great.
So you had guys who had very particular moments when they needed to be the guy. And they were patient enough to know when to respond in those moments and comfortable enough with who they were to just kind of sit back and relax and not press the matter. And that's what happens when you've been in the game for a minute and you understand what it's like to be on a crappy team and have your season end on April 17th or whatever the last day of the season is. Porzingis wasn't he knew what that felt like, and he embraced the fact that he was with a team that was going to afford him an opportunity to have a long and lengthy postseason or something he just wasn't used to.
He was. Let's be wrong a little bit. Zanis, Sam Hauser will fall out of the rotation by December.
Ooh.
You know what? In the finals rotation. Unreal.
Well,
he made it interesting, though.
He became unplayable in Indy, but I think we kind of pegged this right. We thought that'd be a tough series, and then I did think he would play some. But Hauser, this year was I wasn't sure, right? Because I think for me, I was so all like he had the best defensive rating in the league the year before was, a silly stat. But this year, he was awesome defensively. Like he really was. He was
guarding Luke in the finals.
He was competitive. He's competitive every time. Every time you switch onto him, most times that people would score on him, it would be contested. You never felt bad about like, oh God, you got to get him off the court. That Indy series is one of the few times all year. There were cold streaks he went through where the 3 wasn't falling. And you're like, what are you getting out of this guy right now? Because, you do need that. But he was valuable this year. And really, that's all you needed. The reason I thought he'd be out was I thought it was entirely shot dependent. And I thought one of the many people they had on the bench behind him might start to push him for minutes because Joe might be looking for more defense. What I was wrong on entirely was Joe values shooting much more than he values defense and rebounding and other things, which is why Brissett didn't play much, which is why Tillman didn't play much, which is why, and I'm going to smoothly segue, Banton didn't play much. And we're going to go to Bobby's prediction here. Banton becomes the surprise backup wing. Now, Bobby's going to defend this because it could have been right when we saw what happened with Banton when Banton left the team. But I thought some of these guys would push Hauser for minutes because they're more athletic or could maybe turn into better 3-and-D wings. It didn't happen. But, Bobby, you thought Banton was the guy, and you still do.
Yeah, no, I loved this preseason, loved this camp, summer league last year too. He seemed to fit into what they wanted to do, but the shooting was just so bad. And there's going to be a question with Joe going forward. does he give these guys the run they need during the regular season? Does he commit to some of these young guys who maybe don't flash right away or maybe don't have a shot that fits well within the system and the space and that they want? Because it was bad. Got a start, got 24 games, shot 37% from the field, 12 from 3, and he didn't shoot great in Portland either. But with the extra run, the extra opportunity, you saw at least what he was capable of there with 17 points a game. So we'll see what happens with him into the future. But I'm glad you at least saw the flash that I saw here translate a little bit to Portland, and with some extra opportunity, he had some really good games there, including the second one, I think, against the Celtics. He was pretty good. So, yeah, this one didn't work out. They end up trading him. They bring in Jaden Springer, who never really did anything either, at least yet. But if he ends up being a long-term piece for the team, I guess it's a good move.
Go back to what Nick Nurse was saying about Benton, that sometimes he's really good.
Yo, he nailed it with that quote, didn't he? Yo, he kept it a buck. He kept it 100, man. Yeah.
That's about as like cold as a coach will give you. Basically saying
Lamar Stevens
don't
too.
know what the hell you're getting from him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're gonna go to
Stay ready, crew.
Another Sherrod prediction. Brad Stevens, Executive of the Year. Again, Sherrod, I'm going to urge you to do be bolder next year. But just a little bolder. But yes,
I just want to win. He was taking layups.
Nailed it.
Sherrod made all his predictions thinking about this show.
Absolutely. Nailed it. No, I thought Brad was just, again, I think when we
won it before the year began.
Yeah,
he won it before we did the show. He'd already won it won it when you made this prediction.
He did. Totally. Yeah. Joe Sway, one of the points that Joe Sway made earlier about just, Brad being a former coach and all that, that's one of the reasons why I think we underestimated Brad, because we thought, well, he used to coach these guys and now he's making decisions on how the team's going to put together. That's going to suck because he didn't win a championship, didn't take them deep into the playoffs as a coach. How can he possibly be better as a GM? That insight was he knew exactly what they needed. No, he knew exactly what he did not have when he was coaching the team. So he made sure that he added those pieces. I don't think it's a coincidence that when you look at the pieces that put them over the top, it was more about what can I do to add value, talent, and leadership, all three of those boxes to check off, so that Jaylen and Jason don't have the weight of the world on their shoulders, even though they're going to, because they're our two best players. But they're not going to have to carry us every single night and in the playoffs. We're going to make it so that others have the ability to carry us. And he found a guy in Porzingis who just wanted to play for a team that could win. He didn't give a damn whether he's the first, second, third, fifth option. Just, can we win games? Because I haven't done that in my career. And Drew Holiday, I think, had a little chip on his shoulder because Milwaukee was just like, Drew.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think about it. This guy was literally, you could make a case he was as good or better than Giannis when they won.
Giannis, yeah, man.
And cut him
just as important. Yeah.
Send him to basically basketball Siberia in Portland.
Sub Banter.
Like, good luck. Thanks for coming out. You don't think he's going to get, when he gets a chance to get back with a team, not only in the East, but is literally Milwaukee's one of Milwaukee's stiffest competitors, he's going all out to make them sick to their stomach as he wins another chip, which I think he has.
Pushing.
That's why Embiid hates them so much.
Embiid, honestly, the biggest loser of the NBA Finals was Embiid for the one day he showed up.
All of those quotes.
And acted like such a stupid baby. Like, I'm sorry. And this isn't
real.
This isn't me being a homer. You just look like such a stupid loser baby.
So salty, man.
Shitting on the team in there. I hate them. They didn't beat
You're lucky I got hurt.
Shut up. What a baby. Like, I don't mind Embiid, and I like that he speaks his mind. He just sounded like such a dummy.
He could have spewed that crap on a podcast. Yeah, that's the better way to put it, I guess. But yeah,
he played and they lost.
Absolute child. I thought it just looked so immature. Anyway, pushing Sherrod for the most right guy. Yes, Jimmy, screw you, buddy. I'll give it to you. Jimmy, Jaylen Brown is your finals MVP. Yeah.
Damn.
Jimmy also said Peyton Pritchard wins the 3-point contest. I didn't put that up there because we don't have much to talk about if we do. But this one was right on. Spot on. Jimmy also said Al Horford would hit 50% of his threes. But those were silly. This is a pretty damn good prediction.
Well, Al has the record, if I'm not mistaken, right? For finals. Finals, what was he, over 50% in the finals for bigs? So, yeah.
Yeah. He
called it. In the game. Yeah.
Jaylen Brown, finals MVP.
I wish we all believed in this one a little bit more because I always said you wish the team took on a little bit more of his personality, his urgency at times, and it felt like he wasn't capable of taking the team over and pushing them in that direction. He got to the point, as you said earlier, John, where he could actually make that kind of imprint on a game. Tatum doesn't have it. He takes it over. The vocal side of him really came out this year. And I think that leadership you saw in the defensive assignments he would demand, those all played into the voters embracing this decision because it's hard. Everyone looks at Tatum and says he's the best player in this team. And I think for a while you looked at it that way. But now, especially with the strides Brown made this year, they are truly equals in this dynamic. They are.
Bobby, the thing that made me doubtful that this would happen is because it's not about what they do in the court. It's not about the stats. It's about human votes. People vote for this. And I never thought Jaylen was going to get the kind of credit that I think his play deserves. I think they would always look at him, well, he's doing well because he's playing with Tatum versus he's doing well because he's a good player. That's why I did not think he would get it, even after he clearly was the best player over the course of the finals. But the fact that everyone stunk in game 4, but Tatum probably stunk the least, and the fact that Tatum was the best player on the floor in game 5, I thought that would have put Tatum over the top. It was good to see. It was good to see that Jaylen was rewarded for the totality of what he did in the finals, and not just punished because he had a really bad game 4 and a so-so game 5.
Jimmy just sold a hard hat to Louise. There it is. That's all you have to do to get on Louise's good size here.
Well done, Jimmer.
Well done. There you go.
I want to say we'll move on to the last prediction here, but I want to just piggyback on something Bobby said. I did not think Brown could get to equal status with Tatum. I always thought it would just be a shade below.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
And that because Tatum, at the end of the day, as I said, as we talked about Brown in the past, Brown has a particular set of skills and he's extremely valuable and he takes the heat off and he's a great shot creator and he plays with pace and he's aggressive. And when threes aren't falling, Brown's that guy who can get to the rim and get the bucket for you. But Tatum has a higher playmaking load and what's expected of him and this and that. But he did it in a lot of different ways, part of which was also the defense. And I know he was kind of campaigning for himself all year long, but that mattered. Like him stepping up and taking big individual assignments and what he did with Luka. I mean, that's the reason above all else, I think he wins it more than the offensive stats that he had.
He was unreal this year.
Yeah.
And so
it helped though.
Mattered, but like he's on
a 44%.
He's now in the same conversation because he's doing as much for winning as Tatum is. Before, I think you looked at the on-off, they were not favorable. Like analytics have not been favorable to Jaylen Brown prior to this year. They were not. And the on-off numbers and how they performed when Tatum was off the court and the Brown-led offenses, it was a night and day difference. And that's where you could really see the gap between the two. And that changed this year more so. And Brown really leveled up where he's now kind of closer to the same breath where before I don't think he necessarily was. Brown might have been trending in most people's eyes in the 25 overall player range, and Tatum's flirting for top 5. After this year, I think people are going to view Tatum is around 7 or 8, and Brown is like 12, 13, 14, 15. That gap has narrowed a good bit. I didn't think that was going to happen.
Well, I always point to Game 7, guys. Eastern Conference Finals last year, I call it the ghost of Game 7. Like, as Jaylen Brown said it himself, he was embarrassed. Everyone was talking about his turnovers. Everybody was talking about what this team looks like without Jason Tatum, and I think he really took that to heart. I mean, obviously signing the huge contract, max deal, put him in a space just to go out there and say, look, I'm going to really commit to the defensive end of the floor. And that was a humongous part to him having an incredible career year. But to take it into the postseason and that same defensive intensity into the NBA Finals, it was incredible. It really showed that he really focused in on his craft and also just developing as an overall player. Offensively, again, I mean, taking care of the basketball, becoming a better playmaker, all of that comes into play after Game 7, if you ask me. Not that he was thinking to himself, oh, if Tatum ever goes down, I got to be ready. I wasn't put in the space. I wasn't there mentally or whatever the case may be. But it was a matter of if or when, whatever, I'm going to still do my job. And I think we saw that in a big way this year from Jaylen.
That moment, too, Game 1. The steal, the forced turnover, and the three in the
first one
with overtime. Yeah. That could have changed the whole playoff run. Things could have gone a completely different direction if he didn't do that.
That was again because it was a sweep. People won't remember that as much. But I mean,
all they do inbound the ball, they lose Game 1. Who knows where that's
monstrously big? Yeah, exactly. All right, final prediction of the night: Luke Kornet will have more DNP CDs than games played. This is a greatest hit.
This is a big win for me because I beat you back-to-back years.
I roll this one out every year, but it's more to make a point, not because statistically because I just want to hammer home that he's your third center and that his minutes are not assured, and they're not deserved. But
he was playing up until 2 games into the East Finals. It took him that long to lose a spot.
Yeah, this year, and again, I did think he'd get played off the floor in the postseason potentially. This year, Luke served his purpose 100% during the regular season. He did everything he needed to do within his skill set, and you played this game all year long where you rested Horford and Porzingis on back-to-backs, so Luke was thrust into rotation quite often. You saw an upcoming rush or charge from Nemish Queta, and seeing him play well at times and seeing him do some things that were like, hey, maybe we should play this guy more. And he withstood that. He stayed in Joe's trust tree all season long up until it got to the, to those last couple of matchups where it really wouldn't have been smart to play him based on the style that the other teams had played. He hung in there all year. He started 7 games. He played more minutes per game this year, and a lot of that had to do with him being your second center for about 30 plus games this year, but he hung in there. So this might be the last time we make this prediction, Bobby, because I don't know if Luke's back.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
I think Luke will be back. I think he loves it here. I think they love him, so I think they'll come to something. But it will be interesting because a lot of people have said it to me in the comments and elsewhere. You do start to look at Tillman and you wonder, you got to start thinking about after Al, you got to start thinking about who's on the come up there. And contrary to popular belief, Tillman is young, relatively young, has a switchable skill set on defense, maybe an offensive game that you can start to develop a little bit, but that's been a challenge. I think you need both of these guys. Obviously, O'Shea Brissett opted out yesterday. He's probably gone, I'd imagine. Just because I think these two bigs, your big man position and the depth there, given what has gone on at center here, obviously Al reaching 38 and Porzingis going through the injuries he did, it's important. And the interchangeability at that position was really important too, right? You had Luke for those teams like Cleveland and Miami that weren't going to kill you from 3 or stretch you out. And you had Tillman for those space you out, run, multi-position offensive threat teams where you have to switch around and stuff. Tillman gave them something in that Game 3 against Dallas. Tillman gave them something in that Game 3 against Indy. But man, he's been hurt and he really struggled on offense too. So I feel like you need both these guys. Luke was an awesome offensive player for this team. Not because he was scoring 15 points.
Yeah,
hey,
he did it again.
Again, what do you want to see from him, John? Do you want 25 points from your third center?
Did you see it going any other way, John? I mean,
it's really just the hyperbole. It's at the crux of our entire Kornet debate is simply the word choice. It's more a semantic argument than anything. By saying he was a phenomenal and exceptional, and he's definitely was.
So what was Porzingis, Bobby?
He definitely was not. If Luke was awesome, what was everyone else?
Seriously,
John, can you have an awesome game by setting 8 great screens? That's the kind of stuff I ask with, nailing the handoffs, making the right decisions out of the high. He did all those things.
You did it to Sharon again. You did it to Sharon every time.
They will. Here's my prediction for next year. If Luke goes, they're going to miss him.
Of course they're going to miss him. Those living squares were good.
Yeah. What capacity, right?
You know why I saved this one for last, right? This is called producing. Oh God!
You knew we get a good segment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have to if he leaves, I might have to take that show off.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough. That's gonna be tough. But we did it. We did it. We got through our bold predictions, and again, there's a lot to talk about. And as we said, draft, free agency, more Celtics news coming up. The best thing about going this late in the season is that it's a small window. We don't have much rest. We get through this period of time here with the draft and free agency. It's a little bit of cool down. They're going to be back before you know it, which is great. So keep it with us. We're still rolling. No days off. We're not going to go anywhere here. We're still cranking. We're still on the Celtics train here, and there will be some interesting days ahead. So keep it with us. We'll be back with more draft coverage next couple nights. First to the Floor is doing a live show right after this. Make sure you check them out. They're awesome as well. I think they handed out their awards last night, but they're back with more tonight. So check out First to the Floor. As well, if you're looking for more basketball talk. Otherwise, that's it for us, guys. We are done. We will see you tomorrow. Bobby, update the folks on Twitter, I'm sure, with some draft prep, and then we will have live draft coverage. I'll be back for some of that as well as we get through now 2 days of the NBA draft. We'll see.
Got Brad tomorrow, too.
Yeah, and we'll get Jimmy Toscano back in the fold as well sooner than later, so we'll get some action there. But we will see you guys later. Thank you for hanging out with the Garden Report. Sherrod Blakely, Josue Pavone, real Bob Manning down there, and of course Jimmy Toscano not here in spirit with his two solid predictions. We'll hear from Jimmy later in the week. We'll see you guys later.
Wait, Amit's got an outro for us, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He said he was going to work on an outro.
He had a phenomenal game.
Phenomenal.
Forfeit's out. I think it's an auction. That did not sound like a chair.
It was a freaking chair. It does sound like a chair.